Hustle culture is everywhere. It's the idea that you suffer now to be happy later, or as the legendary Muhammad Ali once put it, I hated every minute of training, but I said, don't quit, suffer now, and live the rest of your life as a champion. And yet, one of the top 5 regrets of the dying is, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. But what if there was a way for us to have our cake and eat it too, where we could do the work that's required in order to be successful, all while having fun along the way? Well, someone who's done just that is Ali Abdaal, a former doctor, successful YouTuber, podcaster, and soon-to-be best-selling author, all while claiming to have done this while enjoying the process. So today, we're talking about the key insights and lessons I took from feel-good productivity to help us to hopefully get more done and enjoy the process along the way, because honestly, it's been working for me. So the book counters the common narrative on success, which is that you have to suffer in order to be successful so we can finally be happy. And instead it presents research that suggests the exact opposite. See, as it turns out, feeling good leads to more success, which leads to better feelings, which leads to more success, and so on. It's like that Naval quote, you can't compete with someone for whom work feels like play. Because while you're trying to suffer through and convince yourself to drop every last bit, they can just play for 16 hours a day, no sweat. It's why you find that the most successful people in any field are the ones who are going to be saying that the reason they did so well is because they love what they do. Take Mr. Beast with YouTube, or Warren Buffett in investing, or Danny DeVito with being an international treasure. So it's actually the people that find ways to love what they do that end up being rewarded the most. But at the same time, most of us aren't exactly blessed with careers or jobs that we love. And so what are we to do? Well, Ali outlines 3 key pillars to feel-good productivity, each with their own action steps, starting with energize. So the key here is to find ways to enjoy what we do so it's less of something we dread and something that we more look forward to. Or as Ali put it,
productivity, to be honest, isn't really about getting more things done. It's mostly about learning to enjoy the journey, because when we're having fun with doing the things that we're doing, then productivity kind of just takes care of itself.
The first way to do this is through a technique called the magic Post-it note. And all it involves is looking at whatever dull or tedious task that we have to do and asking the simple question, what would this look like if it were fun? So maybe you could listen to some music while you work, or you could create video game style progress bars for the topics that you're studying, or you could even just write jokes into your presentation to make it a bit more dynamic. Even the small act of just asking yourself this question can completely transform your work from something you suffer through to something that you actually look forward to doing. At the same time, most of us don't have the luxury of changing the work we're doing to make it fun. In the book, there's a story about the author Matthew Dix, who at one point was having to work 80-hour weeks at a McDonald's. Not exactly the job that you can change much to make it fun, but that's where the second element comes into play. See, what Matthew did was he realized that while he couldn't change the work he was doing, he could change his approach to it. So he decided that every day he was going to try and upsell customers on a different sauce. So for example, Monday would be barbecue sauce day, and while he was ringing up a customer's order, he would try his best to sell them on buying an extra barbecue sauce as well. And every day then he would try and compete with himself to see how many he could sell compared to the last day. That said, nothing quite energizes like the last method, which is through involving people. See, when we find ways to incorporate people into what we do, it releases endorphins in our brain that makes the work we're doing feel effortless. So maybe you could get a colleague a cup of coffee on your break, or you could use an online working space to work alongside a partner through something like WeWork or the London Writers Salon. Anything that we can do to bring people into our work can make a huge difference. But making our work more energizing only works if we can overcome procrastination to actually get started, which is why we come to the second pillar, which is unblock. So we all know those moments where we know what we need to do, hell, we know how to do it, but we just can't seem to will ourselves to make a start. The classic advice on the topic tells us that we either need to wait for motivation or to push through pain using discipline. But the problem is neither of these methods are very sustainable long term. But Ali proposes a simpler method, which is simply removing the friction that's blocking us to begin with. And the first way to do that is through getting really clear on the task. Like really clear, ridiculously clear, like amazingly ultra. Okay, I'll stop. You want to write out the specifics of what you need to do and critically what the next action step is. So it's not study chemistry, it's open the textbook to chapter 9 and test myself on the contents. It's not make a video, it's brainstorm 10 title ideas and write them down. The other thing you can do, which can make this a lot easier, is to plan out exactly when you're going to do something and time boxing it into your calendar. But doing this, you remove all the guesswork of how and when you're going to do the thing, and you can just make a start. That said, a lot of the time we know how to do the thing, we know when to do the thing, but there's still just something in the way of us getting started. So the next step is to remove friction from our environment. Like most things, the brain functions by way of choosing the path of least resistance. So we want to make it as easy as possible to do the thing we want to do and as hard as possible to do the thing we don't want to do. So for example, I've set up my computer, my camera, so I can start recording at a moment's notice, which is really easy. Another thing you could do is set aside your gym clothes next to your bed, so it's the default task that you do in the morning. A good way to play with the emotional friction of getting started with work is through a little 5-minute timer like this. It's also from the book. It's like a $5 on Amazon. But basically, whenever you really can't be asked getting started with work, you literally just tell yourself, I'm only going to work at it for 5 minutes. And if I want to stop after that, then I'm going to. And then you just let the timer run. The reason it works is because 9 times out of 10, the reason we're procrastinating is because we really can't be bothered starting. And it's not actually the task itself. Like when you get started, you kind of get into a bit of a flow and it kind of becomes easy. But what's crucial about it is that if you still feel like not working after the 5 minutes, that you do stop, because otherwise you're just not going to believe yourself anymore and it loses all of its power. That said, the last thing which often prevents us from getting started is just fear of performance. And the way to combat this is through something that I'm doing at this very moment. That's something called the Batman. I'm Batman. Let me tell you how it works. So Ali shares in the book that he has this crippling fear of public speaking, and he finds it difficult literally every time he sits down to record or get on stage. The way he gets over this is by wearing a pair of fake glasses. See, Ali got LASIK eye surgery years ago, and he doesn't actually need to wear glasses. So when you do see him wearing them, it's because he has donned the role of the character of young Professor X from the X-Men movies. So before Ali sits down in front of the camera or on a podcast or on stage, he dons these fake glasses and mentally becomes James McAvoy and acts as though he was giving a speech to his students in a lecture hall. It sounds crazy, but it actually does really work. I mean, for me, sitting down in front of the camera is actually kind of an awkward experience. I mean, you're just staring at a black screen and talking to yourself. But when I assume the role of my favorite character from a TV show, Limitless, it's kind of easy and it becomes fun. I know it sounds really, really cringe, but give it a try, it actually works wonders. So now that we've figured out ways to enjoy our work and beat procrastination like it owes us money, we have some good tools for feel-good productivity. Unfortunately, what we also have is a one-way ticket to burnout. You know that feeling where you do so much for so long that it just becomes completely overwhelming and you become incapable of working on things for weeks or months or even thinking about work. Hitting burnout can cause everything that we've built to come crashing down around us, so it's important that we do everything we can to prevent it. The first way of doing that is by creating an energy investment portfolio. I know it sounds really cool. It's cliche to say, but we all only have so much time and energy in the day, and trying to juggle too many projects at once is a great way to make progress in none of them and also get overwhelmed in the process. So for this, we want to take a look back at our time box calendar that we made earlier, and we want to see which goals we have time to actively invest in and which ones we could do with putting on hold until we have more time. But as we all know, even one project can be enough on its own to cause burnout if it's all we do. In the book, Ali tells a story from when he was a junior doctor in the emergency unit, and it was packed. There were people with shards of things in their heads and everything, and he was scheduled to take a break, but he decided that he was just going to power through to try and help people. That is until a senior doctor came by and made him take his break. See, the senior doctor explained that when we go long periods without breaks, we use up our brain's reserve of chemicals like dopamine and serotonin, which not only allow us to perform at our best, but also allow ourselves to actually enjoy what we're doing. So for this reason, it's important, scratch that, it's vital that we schedule breaks into our day when we think we may need them. What's important here though is to not go and just automatically engage in something for your break, like scrolling social media or eating bad food, you know, the kind of things that are going to have us coming back feeling sluggish, but instead making a list of behaviors that are going to have you coming back feeling bright and energized. So maybe you could go for a walk, or you could call a friend, or engage in what he calls a calm hobby and do something like painting. But the final part of our feel-good productivity system is all about making sure that we're properly aligned. I mean, the last thing we want is to run really fast in the wrong direction and end up somewhere that we'd rather not be. So to remedy this, Ali suggests drawing out what's called a wheel of life.
Split it up into 3 segments. And those 3 segments are for your work, for your health, and for your relationships. So now you have a wheel with 3 thirds. Now you want to split up each of the thirds into 3 segments each. So at this point, you've got a wheel with 9 segments. If you don't want to do it on paper, you don't have to do it on paper. You can just literally write down these different categories that I'm about to give you. And so those categories are within health, we have 3 things, and that is body, mind, and soul, or you can call it physical health, mental health, spiritual health, but I kind of like body, mind, and soul because it sounds more cute. Under relationships, we've got romance, family, and friends, and then under work, we have mission, money, and growth. And you can call mission your career or job or whatever you want to call it, but that's kind of the main thing that you are doing for work. Okay, so at this point, we've split up life into these 9 different components, and the job now is that we want to rate on a scale from 0 to 10 how aligned we feel in each of these different areas of our life.
Next, we want to think about the kinds of achievements we'd want to be celebrating a year from now in each of these, especially the ones that we scored lower in. So for example, for me, for the growth portion, I wrote that I want to have made 52 videos by the end of the year, which is why you're seeing my lovely face right now. But you could also celebrate having lost 14 pounds, or celebrate having spent more time with the people you care about. After that, we want to outline the steps that we need to take to make this a reality and plop it into our calendar to make sure that it actually gets done. And with that, we have our recipe for feel-good productivity, but you're going to need to be consistent, otherwise it's kind of pointless, which is why I made this video going over how I worked out for 200 days straight, which you can find here.